Welcome to Honestly Rated, and today we're going to be talking about your favorite piece of bamboo, Zook. Zook is one of the starting core Skylanders from the first game that I thoroughly enjoy, and doing Honestly Rated on it honestly made me enjoy him just a little bit more, you know? And his move set, his personality just work all together into one character, and he might have a good score, but we'll get into that when we go talk about the character itself. But we're going to talk about his history first, a little bit of background behind him, just to, line up to really understand what Zook is. Zook is a species of Bambazooker, which usually just stand around and don't really go anywhere else. But Zook is a different kind of man. He is that guy. And he decided, why not fucking move? And he did that. He moved, and no one else really decided to do it. No one else really decided they wanted to move. So he's really the only kind that actually decided to, step around. And with that, he became a Skylander. His heroing feat that caused him to do it was because some elves were fucking looking at him and they're like looking at him funny. And he was like, "Hey, what is that? Is that a telescope? Does he have a what is that?" And then with them trying to look at Zook and questioning who he is, a big ass troll came up behind them, and he was about to fucking he was about to tear him up. But Zook came in with his bazooka, bang bang bang, sent that troll back where it came from. They're all happy, and now he's a Skylander, which makes me happy because he is honestly a good character. So let's go look at the moveset, and let me tell you why I think Zook might be one of the top honestly rated characters I've rated so far. But before we go into it a little more, let me just say thanks to you for all the suggestions, all the views, all of that. Everybody's amazing who's watching and commenting. You're amazing. So leave down who you want to see next on Honestly Rated, and let's go look at this green bastard. The first moves for Zook are Bazooka Attack, pretty lame name, and Foliage Barrier. These work pretty well together. Who would have guessed? So Foliage Barrier is just what it sounds like. It's a barrier. But the nice thing about it, unlike Shroom Booms, usually the enemy would attack the actual foliage. It's going to attack the bamboo. And it stalls out, right? Like it might die a little early, right? It's not like the longest lasting thing for a first upgrade, but it does serve a purpose, and that is to distract while you just fucking start firing away bazookas, which is his primary attack. Which also creates Sharpal, which is a thing you're gonna have to remember for later because a lot of upgrades actually do deal with this, surprisingly. Sharpal is just the after attack, like the splash damage of it. It just explodes and it sends out little pebbles basically. And they're really nothing too crazy. It helps with like chompies and stuff, being able to take out a large horde. Even though the rocket's really doing that itself anyways, it's still a nice little bit of chip damage. Not a lot. It's like 7 or 6, or it's very little. Very little in the beginning at least. But these moves do work together, and I do like a good decoy. And that's exactly what the barrier does, and it works very well. The first two buyable moves are Hardwood and Fungal Bloom. These just increase damage and also increase the damage taken from the barriers, which both do very nicely, right? Like, I do like how the upgrades look on it. Like, it looks very nice. But it's nothing crazy. I do like the mushrooms, and them being able to take added damage means they get to last longer, and if you don't have to put these bad boys out as much, that's a win-win, Like, you're just primarily focusing shooting. Sometimes enemies still want to come at you, usually if you're closer than the actual barrier itself. But, you could stay behind it, you can stay away from it, anything like that, and it's just going to sit there and last. You can put multiple out, too. You can put roughly 2 out, and you just have to just stand back and shoot. Nothing to it, nothing crazy, and it at least enables you to want to use both moves. So, very nice upgrades to help, but nothing creative or crazy like that. But I'm not really expecting it that much from the first primary ones. The third move you can buy is going to be his special move, the Mortar Attack. I keep saying Mortar, I'm sorry, it's like Mortar Attack, yes. And I think it works very well with his move set, and I'm going to tell you why. So there's going to be a little wind down, alright? So, the rocket itself, the normal primary attack, shoots very fast, you can move around with it. The mortar is different to where you have to stand still when you shoot it, and it's not as fast, but I've seen you can spam with it if you stand still. So, kind of spammable, but kind of not. It depends if you need a move or not, but it works well in the sense that if you put down your mushrooms or your foliage, it's going to block, right? So the enemies are going to attack that, so they're not going to pay attention to you. So you could spam the mortar, but if you need to run around, you can use the rocket. That works very well. It lets you use all of his moveset and make it feel like there is a reason to it, right? And it's not only just like the rocket launcher, it shoots above, it locks on, unlike the rocket launcher. I've seen the rocket launcher usually is more where you want to shoot, but if you just look towards an enemy, usually the pineapple will go towards the enemy. You don't really have to be that perfect with it. And it does better splashback than the normal rocket launcher, since rocket does sharpenal damage, which is like 16 damage. If there's multiple enemies, use a mortar, it's going to hit all the enemies for the same amount of damage, which is like 47, which is more than the normal rocket launcher. So there is reasons behind it, and it works very well, and later upgrades make this an insanely powerhouse move, and you're going to see why. The last upgrade you need to buy before you go to the paths is full Splinter Jacket, which just lets your bazooka shells create more Sharpnel, which maybe I should have said it before, but mortars don't create Sharpnel, which is alright. Already, like, the mortar's already doing a lot, but the bazooka Sharpnel doesn't really feel like much anymore, because with the mortar, right, with bigger packs like this, if you just use a mortar shell, it's probably going to hit all of them, and it's going to do insanely a lot more damage. So Sharpnel now doesn't really feel like it really needs that upgrade, just because you're not really basing off most of your damage doing it. Like, is it a nice thing? Yeah, I guess. I guess if you really can't use the mortar shell because there's a lot of enemies chasing you, having a bazooka, which does more in Sharpnel damage and creates more Sharpnel, I guess would help, right? But it's really nothing too crazy anymore. They should have put this before the mortar, I would think, just so it felt like it had more of a use in the beginning. But since you're getting this after, it's a little bit of a, like, up in the air. Like, do you use the bazooka more or do you use the mortar more? Really depends on that. The top path is going to deal with our bazooka, and high velocity sharpenal and old growth bazooka do exactly that. And it's kind of bland, the top path, I would say, except for maybe the final one, but these both just do what kind of like primary upgrades would do. It makes Sharpnel a little longer, which it does increase the damage, I would say. I would say that normally Sharpnel hits a lot more with it reaching a lot further ground. But again, Sharpnel, is that really your primary damage? Not really, so unless you have like a hordes of enemies coming at you, Sharpnel really isn't going to do too much. And then increased damage with Sharpnel and the bazooka, you know, both very basic upgrades. Two upgrades that really don't pay to mind. Two upgrades that you can clump together into one segment because they really don't do too much. Nothing crazy to talk about here. Now for the last one, Exploding Sharpnel lets the Sharpnel explode on contact, damaging nearby enemies. Which, again, nothing crazy. I thought this might have done more damage, you know, Exploding Sharpnel, that sounds like it would do more damage, but increases just the range of it. So, to boil down the top path, it's range for Sharpnel, and then more damage for your bazooka. Nothing exciting on the top path. But the bottom path really creates a nice thing, and this is probably the biggest downside about Zook, is that his top path doesn't even feel like a path. It's just more of just filler, you know? Like, it helps. It feels like another primary path, you know? Like, a path I have to take before I can go to the crazier things. Nothing insane up here. You can definitely go for it if you really just don't like the damage output Zook can put out, but I definitely think the bottom path can help clear hordes insanely better than this Sharpnel path can. The bottom path is where I think Zook gets his best abilities, which first one is going to be Cactus Barrier. Cactus Barrier is going to allow you to put up cactuses which enemies could collide with and deal damage to. And with that, it's very situational, I won't lie. So, the best way to use it is to place it onto an enemy. So if there's enemies chasing you, placing cactus right below them, they'll usually attack the cactus while inside of it, and you get chip damage, which, just like the Sharpnel can, isn't a lot, but it's something at least, right? Again, you're not primarily going to use this for damage. This isn't going to be your kill tool, but like Chompies or stuff like that definitely have a harder time trying to get to you if they're just going to die instantly because their AI is attracted to the cactuses than to you. So far, a better upgrade to the barriers. It definitely increases their usefulness and still has the same benefits. The second upgrade, Mortar of Life, actually deals with the motor itself, which is kind of strange. Usually they don't really do that with paths. They really stay like narrow to what they want you to look at. And with this, it's a very positive upgrade. So your mortar now creates cactuses or mushrooms depending on which one you buy. But if you've bought cactuses, which I'm guessing you kind of go in the line in, it creates cactuses, which it works exactly the same as your barriers. It only creates one, but there's going to be a future upgrade that's going to make this go wacko, and you're going to be able to create multiple at once, and it's a super spammable thing. And with AIs and them not trying to fight you, but the cactuses, having just this tool to spam out a bunch of cactuses kind of defeats the purpose of being able to build barriers, but definitely helps with trying to get away from things and increases the motor to be able to be spammed even further. The last move, Fighting Foliage, is another great move for the barriers. This is going to allow the cactuses to attack without necessarily having the enemy walk up exactly next to it, which is super nice. The main problem with cactuses is that they would do damage, but you would kind of need the enemy to walk into the cactuses first, which is kind of hard because the AI doesn't want to walk into it, it just wants to attack it. So, the cactuses evolved and now said, fuck you, I'm going to attack you no matter what. And it just adds more chip damage. Obviously, nothing insane, but it does add another feature to the barriers, which is now, it's not only just a tool that can be used if it walks into it, it's a tool if it gets near it. And it adds a lot of value to it, which I think is the top half's most problematic feature, is that it really doesn't feel like it adds too much value. Yeah, it adds damage, but that's it, right? Like, this bottom path adds damage, more defensive features, and just overall just makes Zook a better player. And then the soul gems are probably the best soul gems we have covered so far on this honestly rated adventure. So let's go talk about them, because they make the bottom path even more insane. So his primary soul gem, the one you can get with Series 1 and Eon's Elite, is Motor, which allows 3 pineapples to be shot out. Now if you remember one of the upgrades from the bottom path, that allows you to shoot out a cactus every time a mortar lands. So now we have the standard mortar, which is shooting 1 cactus, and now it splits into more. So now we're shooting out 4 cactuses. These are all split out, so they could potentially land on big hordes of enemies, and it creates even more decoys. This is literally the decoy and damage all added up into one. Now, the downside to this is that this makes basically a lot of other moves kind of useless, right? The bazooka, again, we haven't really been even paying attention to, just because it does a good amount of damage. It helps you run away, right? And there's still enemies that probably still would attack you. And if you spam this too much, all the foliage will go away, and then all the enemies start focusing on you. But it adds a lot of damage. You know, the bazooka or the mortar themselves only do 10 extra damage, the ones that triple and split off, but they're still adding more value because of the cactuses. And that's exactly why I think the bottom path is way superior. It makes the soul gem even better than it's supposed to be, and you can still put out barriers. So there's a lot of cacti on the field, and a lot of things to distract the enemy from not attacking you. It's super nice. Now time for the Wow Pow, which is another useful tool into his arsenal, which is Target Locked. Target Locked allows you to hold the button, which is a very awkward button. You know, you have to hold triangle and square, which is not like your thumb really can't do that. But if you're looking at this amount of damage right here, right? Like, you can spam this move like crazy. So now you have a bunch of foliage coming out, you have a bunch of mortar attacks coming out, which roughly do like 40 to 50 damage depending on crits and stuff like that. And it just goes wacko insano. Like, this is beautiful. You stand still, you shoot out a bunch of these things. You can set up cactuses to just distract enemies. They won't come towards you, and if they do, they might die, honestly, before you even get to them. And you get to pick where you want to shoot it, right? So you can primarily shoot at one big target, or you can shoot at a very large amount of people without having to deal with the mortar's auto-lock onto whoever it decides it wants to in front of you. It's a beautiful tool. It really adds, again, more to him. You can cheese out multiple enemies by just standing away from them and then choosing the mortar to shoot at them before they can recognize you. Like, it helps a lot, and it creates Zook to be this powerhouse of a character for just a standard Skylander, right? This is just a core Skylander, and he's insane with this. Again, it creates a kind of a dilemma here, though, where do you really need to use the barriers? Do you really need to use the bazooka? For me, yeah, I feel like the bazooka and shield still come into play to a certain degree, but you're definitely using the mortar a lot more than you used to. After taking a look at Zook's whole arsenal, what do I rate him out of a 1 to 5 scale? I'm going to have to give him a 4.5. And the reason being is that his top path just does not, nowhere is on the same scale as his bottom path. Like, his bottom path over surpasses it by a mile. And I definitely think for a character to be perfect, or honestly a very good character, it has to be able to balance both out and create some sense of fun out of both, right? Like, I don't want to have to sit here and pick which one I think is better. I'd rather just be able to, whatever day, just be like, I want to do this path, I want to use this path, I want to use this path. But the bottom path on Zook definitely beats it by so much because it adds so much more to the character with his soul gems and his wild pals and using his different moves. But I definitely think he's able to balance that out, and he's definitely a really fun character for even a character being from the first game, which if you really don't know, first character series characters really don't end up being too strong later in the future games just because everything in the future gets stronger. And with it getting stronger, enemies get stronger. But the past ones really don't. But Zook was able to surprise me, and I was able to clear out enemies pretty easily. So, good job, Zook. If you don't own Zook already, he doesn't really cost too much. He costs like $5 to like $6, $7. And I definitely suggest picking one up. I would go with the Series 2. You could also go with the Eon's Elite for more damage. But I don't know if the Eon's Elite would have the Wild Pal, so maybe search that up before buying it. And it's also way more costly than the normal one, so definitely just pick up a Series 2. Has a nice pose to it also. I do enjoy a little bit of my Zuki Bear. But that is honestly rated for you all, and I hope you guys enjoy this series. And with that, I hope you guys will maybe leave down in the comments who you want to see next. And I'm definitely down for any of them. I just put them on a list, and then I start eventually buying all the Skylanders to get all the footage I need. And eventually it will come to fruition. Thank you for whoever suggested this. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day / week. Peace.